well, welcome everyone. We are so excited to have you today. My name's Nahi Kazaza. I'm the program director for ICF Orange County. We have Dave Huxtable here. He'll be co-hosting today and working with the background on the class. It's a virtual meeting. We're asking everyone to put themselves on mute to start. And in a second, I'm going to be introducing our speaker. We also have Greta here today. Hi, Greta, as our board. And we have Nanor. I saw her coming on somewhere. I just want to welcome all of you. I think this is going to be a really, really exciting session. So who we have with us today is Lyssa deHart. She is an MCC and a mentor coach. And one of the things that attracted me to her personally is that, well, first of all, I just enjoyed talking to her when I called her, but she coaches coaches through the credentialing process, and she runs classes for people who are getting their ACCs, MCCs, PCCs, or renewing them. And so what she's going to do today is a demonstration for us and kind of walk us through a checklist. I think it's really going to up-level our skill set. And if you're interested in any of her programs at the end of the session, I think she's going to put up a slide that has her contact information, but she's got a couple great classes coming up. Let me read her official bio. Lyssa deHart, LICSW, MCC, author of Storyjacking, Change Your Dialogue, Transform Your Life, is a leadership, confidence, and whole life coach. Lyssa works with confidence-challenged high achievers who are ready to rewrite the internal narratives that slow them down. Her clients include executives, senior leadership, and managers at organizations such as Amazon, Boeing, Microsoft, the US military, as well as with creative writers, actors, and artists. Lyssa is also an ICF certified mentor coach and course leader with an international coaching school. She uses her understanding of the ICF core competencies combined with her knowledge of neuroscience to work with professional coaches. So I am so excited to bring you Lyssa. I want to let you know that this is an hour-and-a-half course today. We're going to be spending kind of the first time with Lyssa giving us the overview. Then we're going to do our coaching demonstration in the middle. And then we're going to do a debrief. And you should have gotten a handout attached to your last Zoom invite. And if you have the time, without getting too distracted, you can print it out. It has all the coaching competencies and places for you to check them off as you're going through. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Lyssa, and thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me, and thank you, Nahid, for the beautiful introduction. Just a little bit more, just as a quick introduction, I am very happy to be interrupted, so please feel free to, I've got the chat open, so please feel free to write questions in the chat, or if there's something that you're like, wait, you please feel free to come off mute and like go, wait. It's totally fine. I'm pretty flexible about all of this information. I'm gonna go and share my screen, so if you don't see it, please somebody say something, but I think you'll probably see Art and Science of the update, using the updated core competencies. So for those of you who have the core competencies that I sent out in front of you, please, you can just bring them even up on your computer. But what we're going to be really looking at today is really taking a look at the changes in the updated ICF core competencies, looking at how neuroscience is impacted by the use of the competencies and how they really benefit people. We're going to do a coaching demonstration with somebody as a client. And honestly, I think 2 people signed up and said they were interested in doing it, but I don't know that they've shown up yet. So if for some reason somebody doesn't show up, maybe if you have a topic you'd like to do, like a 20-30 minute coaching conversation around, I'd be absolutely happy to have you step forward if our already predetermined clients don't make it on. Really looking at also how we use listening deeply to help support these ideas, and then growth in growing your coaching mindset, which is the new core competency. I really believe that all of us as coaches, if we can stay in beginner's mind with our clients, and I see I have beginner's mind, I've put apostrophes in all kinds of places with beginner. So, but with your beginner's mind, really staying in that space with your clients is such an important part of the co-creative process. And I'll talk more about that in just a moment. But really, we all start off not knowing what we don't know. And then I think we go through coach education, we have lots of practice coaching with people, and we start to really fall into the habit of expertise. And it is the seduction of expertise, as I like to call it, and really to then step back from that place and allow your client to be the one who's the expert on themselves and the situation and what they need to be considering doing to move themselves forward. So the ICF Core Competencies, I'm going to make an assumption, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the assumption is that everybody knows that starting in January 2021, that the ICF Core Competencies will have moved from this older model of 11 core competencies, and we will be working with the 8 core competencies. There's the same 4 clusters. You've got your foundation, ethical practices. Ethics has really changed also. So if you haven't spent any time on the ICF website, taking a look at the ethics that they've written as of November of 2019, I would encourage you to do that. There's a lot more specificity about ethical expectations, and it's quite thorough. They added a new competency, which embodies a coaching mindset. And this is one of those interesting competencies because it on the surface looks like something that you may be doing in the background. But I honestly am finding that much of what shows up in the embodies a coaching mindset actually really shows up in coaching conversations also. And so we'll talk a little bit about that if that comes up and is something that is interesting to you all. The second cluster is still co-creating the relationship. And really the only things that have changed here is more around language. So instead of establishes a coaching agreement, it's really now establishes and maintains agreements. Establishing trust and intimacy has changed into cultivating trust and safety, which is interesting. I hear this from many people that they prefer the new language around cultivating trust and safety versus the language of establishing trust and intimacy. I'm kind of curious. Let me pull my chat up. How do you guys feel about that particular change right there, just in the language of that core competency? And you can come off mute also, but this shift from trust and intimacy to trust and safety.
Hi, this is Penny. It's probably more culturally and universally accepted, safety versus intimacy, because when I've talked with people about, being in a relationship, I could be in a relationship with with somebody at the grocery store that I just met. But people think relationship is, oh my God, it's a love relationship.
Yeah.
So safety is probably a lot less charged, a lot more accepted universally is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think that is. I mean, I think we can have intimacy in relationships that are romantic relationships. I mean, you may have a really good friendship where there's a deep degree of trust and safety, and so there's a depth of intimacy. But intimacy is sort of the byproduct of creating safety, right? And I think, Nahid, you said that also. It goes along with our, the work of Amy Edmondson and the whole fearless organizations and psychological safety. That work is really pivotal in how we understand what happens in the brain when we feel unsafe. And so building trust and safety within a conversation is crucial to really all elements of the conversation that you might be having. And so thank you guys for that. And yeah, Margot, given our current climate, I think safety is just, it's in some ways, it's a broader word that allows more accessibility, right? I don't need to be intimate with you, but we can absolutely create safety between us. Coaching presence is turning into maintains presence. That's an interesting shift also, because coaching presence is sort of a thing, but maintaining it is an action, right? And cultivating is also, it's an ongoing process that is, yeah, it's not a one and done. It is a ongoing process. And I think that that's some of the language shifts that are really important in the competencies is active listening turns into listens actively. Again, it's a behavior, it's a skill set where we are doing that. Powerful questioning, direct communication, and creating awareness have now really consolidated into evokes awareness, which gives you a lot more flexibility and freedom because it is all these different elements of how we ask a question that then helps support the client's awareness. And then the fourth cluster is cultivates learning and growth, and that is really if you've gone for your PCC and you ever did your demonstration and you got your feedback, when you look at the PCC markers, they were already really clumping 9, 10, and 11 anyway, and so they've just cleaned that up for the purpose of the competencies, so facilitating client growth, and it just brings all of those together. Let's see, maintaining presence makes this much more about the client. Yeah, being present for the client rather than focusing solely on the coach. Exactly, absolutely. And I gave everybody the checklist, and I think it's a really good tool to look through because it gives the different indicators of the competency. Those are also typically pretty behaviorally oriented when you look at them. You know, you have things that are really things like seeking to understand, right? Demonstrating respect, acknowledging and supporting. Demonstrates shows up a lot, and exploring, encouraging. These are all very much activities that we can be doing. And so the competencies, honestly, I love the updated version. I think it just simplifies it. I think the language is much cleaner, and I think that it supports what I think is really the important element, which is the container of a coaching conversation. And this really, I bring this up first because I really see that there is a container to the competencies that is provided by the competencies. We start with, you know, the foundation, which is around our ethical behavior, the way that we are creating contracts with our clients, things of that nature. Our transparency is really named in our ethics, as well as our mindset, which is one of growth and personal development and awareness, which really provides a stable foundation. But then the container of the conversation itself is really this idea that we're creating agreements. We're finding out what is really important to the client that they're bringing forward. What is meaningful about that to them? And what do they want by the end of our conversation together? What would be maybe a success measure or an outcome that would make this conversation meaningful? What we do when we have this clarity in our coaching conversations is that we have clarity around what is important to the client. We have clarity between ourselves that we're on the same page, but we also have a sense of where they want to go. Who here has ever gotten into a coaching conversation, realized you didn't know where the client really wanted to go, and so you're just sort of lost as to what to ask next? I'm going to stop sharing just real quick because I'd love to see faces. When you hear me say that, who here has ever experienced that place where you're like, I don't know what to ask next? Anyone? Yeah, me too, right? Like, you know, I mean, it's an interesting place to get to. And I would say that it often comes because we didn't ask what the client wanted to have by the end of the conversation. So we have no place to really check in as to what it is that what we're doing. Is it useful? Is it helping drive them closer to what they said their stated outcome objective or their goal was for the conversation? So an example of this might be a client comes to you and says, you know, what's important to you today? Oh, I've been really wanting to lose weight. Okay, so what is really driving that for you right now? Well, you know, I'm noticing that I'm eating a lot of stuff because I'm self-soothing. Okay, and then we can go deeper into what that means, right? But then where would you like to be by the end of this conversation? And clients will often say things like, I'd like to have some tools, right? I'd like to have some tools or strategies to help me with this problem that I've got. At least if I know that that is where the client wants to go by the end of the conversation, I can say, what next do we need to explore as we're moving towards more tools? Or what do we need to explore next? Or how are we doing in moving towards an understanding and awareness that will help support coming up with tools? The client then is in a place of directing me, but I'm reminding them where they said they wanted to go, right? And then they can tell us where we need to go next. And so this really leads into the neuroscience of coaching in and of itself. So let me share my screen again. So there's been some really interesting research. This is from 2018. I will be giving you guys a link at the end where you can download a copy of the slides and where you can also get the research paper that I used for this research right here. And you can also get a copy of that shifting from the old to the updated core competencies, which I think you already have. But they've done this particular research is really interesting because what they were doing is fMRIs. And so they were looking at how our brains responded to different things. And they were also doing interviews and having the participants fill out questionnaires. And they found that there were really two ways that we do coaching as coaches. One way is a positive emotional attractor, or a P. And this is a coaching style that demonstrates a greater engagement of the brain areas associated with motivation. When you're thinking about coaching, what are we trying to do, right? Then there's the negative emotional attractor, the me. And it is, by contrast, it produces greater activity in the regions of the brain associated with the stress response. And they talk more about the different brain regions. We're not going to go into all of them right here, but it's really important to consider when you start thinking about how you're asking questions, and if you're leading the client towards something that has them feeling negative or positive about the direction of the conversation, it's going to engage different elements of the brain. Can't help it. And a lot of the reason we accidentally do this is not because we aren't well-intentioned. We're very well-intentioned, but we have our own biases that get activated in a coaching conversation. And those biases tend to be, I want to help you. I'm going to help you. I'm a helper. I'm going to help you figure this out. And the other thing that we do, because we have a bit of clarity of distance, because this is not our life, we have a tendency to go, oh, I see where this client needs to go. I think I'll help them get there. I'm going to help you understand and learn, and let me share my wisdom with you so that you can get to this outcome that I have made an assumption often is the direction that you want to go. And so at that point, coaches move from being curious into driving towards solutions. As soon as you begin driving towards solutions, your client's brain is going to start to shut down, because it's very difficult to hear that I'm now being told what to do in my life. Just think about your own life. I start telling you what I think you need to do in your life, and God knows we have plenty of people in our lives happy to tell us what we should be doing differently. Think about what that does inside of your body and inside of your mind, right? So we do this because we really want the benefit of the client to be there, and yet it isn't how we create sustainable changes. What we need as coaches is we want our clients' brains to light up. We want them to not only create the dots, but link the dots. We need them to do that, because from that place, they retain the learning, they own the learning, and they have a much greater capacity to sustainably change behavior, to remember the learning for a sustained period of time, to actually embody the awareness that they have. And this is crucial, this embodied mind state. And I don't go into it here. I do talk about it in another presentation I do on metaphors, where how do you start to embody understanding and thinking, and metaphors are a way of doing that. But this is how it works, just from a very simple level. You've got your brain, and if you go into this negative emotional state type of coaching, what it does is it evokes this self-conscious thoughts of being judged and having obligations placed on you. It can be incredibly subtle. You can have done it in a very nice, gentle, sweet, loving way with all kinds of empathy and compassion for your client. But it has the same effect of triggering the amygdala, sending out all of the neurotransmitters and hormones that then shut down the frontal lobe, and the brain starts going, oh no, right? And at that point, we're shutting down the client's capacity to think for themselves and also feel safe within the conversation. So I'm going to stop here, and I just want to, actually, I think I have one more slide I want to share. So again, there's the positive emotional attractor, and then there's the negative emotional attractor. And these two different ways that these coaches were perceived by their client was the positive emotional attractors were seen as more inspirational, more trusting, and more caring, whereas the negative emotional attractors were seen as inducing feelings of guilt and obligation. Those are pretty significant differences. So I'm going to stop right here, and I'd love to just sort of touch base with you guys of what you're hearing, what your questions are that are coming up for you. And please feel free to bring yourself off mute.
Hi, I'm Tammy. Can you hear me okay?
I can, Tammy.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see so many of you here. Thanks, Lyssa. I've been a life coach for teen girls for 20 years, and I train and certify women to be life coaches for teen girls. And this is, I can't thank you enough for this, because especially with the teenage brain and the dynamism of their brain, when I certify women to be coaches in terms of evoking awareness, it is critical to bring that energy into the container of inspiration and connectivity that's authentic, and asking questions that do not make a teenager feel more judged, more self-conscious, because they're already doing so much of that self-analysis and peer comparison all the time. So it is critical to ask these questions and to come from this PEA place, so that we don't, for the teenager who's developing their identity, go deeper down and shut down in a coaching session and feel judged, or like another talking head is telling them what to do. So thank you for validating this. I will share this with the ladies I certify, and just really appreciate it, because this is what teenagers really do need. So
well, and I just really like to expand it past teenagers, because I work with people on this age spectrum up to their 70s. And frankly, I've met quite a few people in their 70s who are like, I have these internal narratives and they're very negative, and I'm constantly jabbering at myself about something. And not only is it in some ways more problematic when you're older, because you've been doing it so much longer. You have like hardwired that negative narrative so deeply into your brain that it really actually takes even more energy to start to really get clarity and awareness around it, so that you can stop yourself as a human being and go, throttle back, okay, breathe, and then start working on how do you start to get yourself out of that pattern and create some new habits and new awareness. But this is the thing also, and I have this conversation with new coaches pretty often, because coaches are often like, I want the tool, give me the tool so that I can do this, right? How many people want the tool? Yeah, I see there's people wanting the tool. Well, I love to say this, but you are the tool. If you're needing to be informed, your questions are informed by what you know, but there is no tool greater than you and your capacity to be curious with another human being. And why this is so crucial in my mind is that when you think of your own life and you think of the lives of the clients that you work with, how many of us have just a village around us who cares greatly for us and is in a state of neutral, non-judgment about all of our decisions and the ways that we think about things? We're lucky if we have one, maybe two people in our lives who do not go, "You're going to do what?" Right? And so it is a crucial role that a coach can have. It is really an honored role that a coach can have, where we can sit in a space of non-judgment about another human being's decisions. It doesn't mean that we agree with them or don't agree with them. That is not our role, is to agree or not agree with them. Our role is to inform our curiosity, to ask questions that allow them to explore it in a 360 degree manner. 365, I've been doing some assessments lately. So 360 degree viewpoint, so that they make it all the way around the elephant, right? And that they make their choices from conscious awareness. The only way that we can support people to make choices from conscious awareness is if we keep their brains lit up. The only way we can keep their brain lit up is if we are asking them, not telling them. And this is really where coaching, you start to see magnificent differences between coaches coaching to the competencies. If I'm driving towards a solution, if I'm driving towards solving for the situation, I am missing this opportunity to explore the client's relationship to the situation. I don't care who you are. If you have access to a computer, and I'm going to assume everybody here does, you could do a Google search on how to schedule your time, to make color blocks in your calendar, what foods to eat. You can take, there's probably an app for almost everything that you could do behaviorally to change something. So what makes a coach different than a Google search? What makes a coach, what makes you different than a Google search?
The relationship that we have with them.
It's the relationship, that creation of a non-judgmental safe space to explore. We may have a lot of training, and so that training can inform our curiosity. But what makes us different is, that it's interactive, it's attuning with them. We're asking questions that help them think about things in ways that maybe they can't because their blinders are on, because they're in the middle of that experience. Google is not a mirror Google is not a mirror the way that a present, actively listening coach can be. Google doesn't go, "I just noticed you made a face right there. What is that? What just happened?" Right? Google doesn't do that. Google doesn't care. But it is this sense of really kind of embracing this idea of you are informing your curiosity by listening deeply to your client and having that willingness to, boldly ask some questions that maybe they've never thought about, or even asking them, but constantly giving them the empowered stage of being able to drive where the conversation needs to go, what needs to still be explored, how they want to explore it. And you can't Google creativity and critical thinking and listening. I might disagree. I think you can Google that. I'm not sure that you would get a really thoughtful answer, but you might, depending on the blog article you find. But yeah, there's a huge difference. But you can Google how to schedule. You can Google diet information. You can Google lots of things that coaches tend to drive towards solutions with their clients on. So, and you can't, and I think critical thinking, you can't get that. You can't get that on the internet very easily anymore. Let me put this here. And Google can't listen to us. And that's a really important thing also. It is very difficult if a client is in the middle of a firestorm around something. There may need to be that space to really say, "What do you need from today?" And the client is like, "I just need to vent." And allowing the space for that, because sometimes that's what we need, is that capacity to vent it out of our system so that we can then kind of pull back breathe into it, get some clarity, and then decide what we need to do so that we can get into a mindset where we're going to maybe look towards what do we need to learn, or what do we need to shift, or what boundary do we need to create, those sorts of things. But again, I mean, I love this idea that when we're coaching, we are not coaching the situation. And this is a big mindset shift. We are not coaching the situation. We are coaching the client's relationship to the situation. It is the iceberg model in action, which is, we see at the top of the iceberg, right? We see the behaviors and the outcomes. That's what we see at the top of the iceberg. What's below the waterline are all the factors that are driving the behaviors that lead to the outcomes. If we change only the behaviors at the top of the iceberg and we never dive below the waterline, we run a very real risk of just having a client who's going in a circle over and over again. And maybe it's a new circle, so they kind of deal with it over here because they've implemented a couple new tools, but then it shows up somewhere else, right? And it's the same pattern that hasn't been addressed because we haven't gotten below to what's driving that behavior. And that's the relationship to the situation. Any questions or thoughts at this point? Okay, you guys are welcome to come off mute at any time. So this is the last really of this neuroscience of coaching, but what they're finding, and they call it coaching with compassion, but what they're finding is that if you can take this more positive emotional perspective, what we're going to probably do, or what we do, is we activate the neuroscience, the neuroconnectors and the mechanisms that encourage the individual to continue to move forward, willing to tackle difficulties. Their brain is open, and they have a capacity to create a change in their way that they're thinking about themselves in relationship to the situation. They call this negative emotional, I always forget, Attractor, coaching for compliance. And they call it that because it's often what we do when we're working within organizations and we're trying to solve a problem. People have come to us because they got in trouble and we need to help them come up with a solution to their problem. But the problem with this version is that it doesn't create sustainable changes. So even when somebody has come to you because there's been a problem, you can still coach from this more positive emotional attractor perspective. So I'm going to stop again. This is really the part of the conversation where I have my time set aside to do a coaching demonstration. And before we do that, I'd like to, does everybody have that worksheet that I had sent out at this point? That's a checklist. Cool. So I have it as a checklist because I wanted you to be able to notice when I ask a question. I'm not guaranteeing this will be the most amazing coaching demonstration you've ever seen because it's going to be a real life coaching demonstration. And, you know, some sort of depends, right? Like coaching doesn't always work perfectly. But what I will say is that I tend to be very thoughtful about the way that I ask questions. And so you may notice different questions. The other thing, and especially how many people are like ACCs and are thinking about going towards a PCC here? Got a couple people? All right. One of the things that I think is really crucial, and this is even true, even more so true if you're a PCC and you're moving towards MCC, is that you can ask one question. The question might be something to the effect of, I heard you say A, and then I heard you say C, and I'm wondering what is for you between A and C. This is one question, right? That may hit multiple buckets of competencies. It may be kind of a coaching presence because I'm being very clear about a question. It's definitely an evoking awareness sort of question because the clients now, like, what is between A and C? Like they have to come up with that. It's also around trust and safety. I'm not directing them. That conversation is coming out of, they said A and they said B, C, and I'm now curious about what is between A and C. So that particular question may hit multiple different buckets of core competencies. So when you're coaching, and when you're coaching for coaching a demonstration for your PCC or your MCC, you're still demonstrating the competencies, but it's not a checklist where you need to make sure you ask each of these questions. It is, how are you formulating questions in such a way that you hit multiple competencies, right? It also is, it allows you more space in the conversation to ask a really important question and allow the client to then be the one to drive awareness and helping to anchor that and helping them to recognize it. I always, we've all heard the adage, if a tree falls in a forest and nobody's there to hear it, did it make a sound? And I think oftentimes with clients, we hear them say something that's really an opportunity to champion their awareness, and we ask another question instead of champion the awareness. Right? And again, going back to the positive emotional attractor, championing awareness is indicating to a client, you got it, right? Like, there it is. That was really profound. What did you hear yourself say? How do we anchor their awareness and learning so that now we've all heard the tree in the forest, right? Okay, I'm going to stop here. Questions, thoughts, insights, anything? It's all making sense?
Are you going to show us an example of how to champion the awareness?
Well, maybe, depending on who ends up being the client in this conversation and the conversation that we have. I mean, it's a real conversation, whatever conversation I end up with. So it won't be, I'm not going to just contrive things, but I tend to, so my guess is yes.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, Lori, go ahead.
Hi. So I'm creating courses to help people who are experiencing depression. And so I want to be presenting information. How can I design that to have the PEA inside that? What would be some ideas that you have for me?
Well, I mean, I think one way is if people are coming to you for a course on depression, they're already interested in depression. And so giving them things to read about depression as options, or have, like I was a therapist for many years before I was a coach. And I would say to clients, what is a book? Like, go into the bookstore and just peruse books on this topic and find the one that most resonates for you, because it doesn't matter which book it is. Right? What matters is that it resonates for you and you'll read it. And then we can have a conversation about it. And so that's another way of doing it. Here's a reading list. Choose one. You don't have to choose them all. Just choose one that sounds most interesting to you. What do you agree with or disagree about it? It doesn't even matter if they disagree with it. This is just terrible. Why? What is it that is activating there? Let's get curious about that. Well, that's not true. Like, whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter, because what you're doing is you're allowing them to lead. You're allowing them to be a co-partner in this process of their own work. We call it a co-creative process, right? It's the skill to create it as a co-creative process. It's the letting go of, as I said earlier, the seduction of expertise, the advice monster. And here's the thing also, like, I may have an amazingly good intuition about what might be driving this issue for my client. I mean, I've been doing this since 1991. I tend to have a pretty good instinct on what might be below the surface, right? And yet, I never assume. I always take that idea of beginner mindset. I do not know for sure what is driving this behavior or these feelings or this thinking. I don't know what it is. And I use transparency to always be curious with my client to get clarity around what they're noticing. Because sometimes it's slightly off. I had this experience not that long ago. I was working with a client and I said something, because we were talking about how many of us have these words hooked together. Yes equals good, no equals bad. And so it's hard for me. I know I need to say no to stuff because I've got so much stuff on my plate. But if I say no, people will think I'm a bad person and I don't care, right? Like, so this is sort of a, I mean, and it's not 100%, but lots of people feel this way. So I said to her, you know, I'm hearing something and I'm really curious about it. I'm hearing kind of the yes equals you're a good person who's working hard, and no means you're not a good person. And I'm just curious how that lands on you. And she goes, no, it's not that. She goes, no means lazy. I'm like, interesting. There's a place to get curious. If I had just assumed that no meant bad and I had driven forward with this idea, because from my experience, no typically means I'm not a good person, I would have missed this other thing that was really driving this below the surface for her, which is a story about being lazy. And I'm still awake, so I must have more energy, so I must be working. I have more to offer my organization. I need to do that. Right? And so then she's like, but I'm so exhausted. So what is the challenge to that story of lazy? What else do you know? Right? So I don't assume anymore. Nahid, I'm looking around and I'm not seeing either of our two volunteers from, am I just missing that or?
No, I'm not seeing them either. So I just sent a text out to everybody. And if you would like the experience of being coached by Lyssa as part of our coaching demonstration, jump right in because it should be really fun. So who would like to be coached by Lyssa?
I feel like the Jeopardy music should be playing.
Hi, it's Cheryl Kitchener. And I think I'm going to jump in. I am truly stuck on the top.
Yay!
I am truly and deeply stuck. I could use help.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cheryl. I absolutely appreciate your bravery. So what I'm going to ask the rest of you to do is to please go on mute and also turn off your cameras, because I can make you not show up on my screen and hide non-participants, and then that way. And just covering your camera isn't enough. You actually need to stop your video.
Do you want me to stop mine?
No, you stay with me because I can see you fully at this point. Yeah, no, I absolutely appreciate your bravery in stepping in and being willing to play with me today. I absolutely appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your generous offer.
Well, you're welcome. I would like to just ask real quick before we get going, is there anything that you need, like sort of metaphorically bring the curtains down around us so that you really feel like it's just you and I and we're
I do. Honey, can you turn off the TV? There, that was one thing. No, I just want nothing I truly need, but sometimes I get emotional in this topic, so I'm going to beg for forgiveness up front.
Oh, you get to feel an emotion and emote in any way that you need to. You will not scare me or worry me on any level. I can see it coming up inside of you even as you're starting. What is coming up for you that you wanted to do some coaching around today?
Yeah, so my topic is that for this past year I've been dealing with cancer treatment, which is going well. I got, so I'm challenged with, it feels like getting in my own way.
Mm-hmm.
I love coaching and I'm a good coach, and I'm letting things get in my way, like chemo brain, energy versus fatigue. And I've started to realize I'm using it as an excuse, and it feels like fear.
Yeah, I was going to ask what you thought was really below that excuse making. When you say fear, what is it that you, like, if you were to look at it from outside of it, what does it look like to you, this fear?
Thank you. That's a great question. It looks big.
Mm-hmm.
It looks enveloping. It looks like, fear looks like it's holding me down while I'm squirming underneath.
Yeah. Yeah. This kind
I don't
of
want to
big,
be held down.
yeah. Oh, so then in our time together between now and the next 20 minutes or so, what would you like to have shifted with this relationship to fear?
I want to get out of NEA and get in P.
Yeah, I almost saw like this big rock lifting off of you. I don't know.
It would feel like a rock lifting off of me.
Mm-hmm.
It would. I had a long conversation last night with my husband about it, and that's what motivated me to sign up for today's webinar, and here we are.
And here we are. Look at this, the universe at work.
Inspiring for us.
Yeah, so let me ask you, you know, as we then go from this sort of heavy rock that's sitting on you towards having that rock lifted, where's the first place that would be important to explore?
The emotionality of it.
Yeah.
I would love to get out of my right brain a little bit. I'd love to become more pragmatic around it. My default mode is typically pragmatism, but my default mode lately has just been a cacophony of emotions. And so...
For you, what is between this cacophony of emotions and pragmatism?
Well, I could tell you it's a space I'd like to be. And I could tell you that I'm totally open to my emotions. I went on this cancer journey and I took the empty cup with me. So I'm open to it all. And I just as a sidebar, you know, when you do tell the universe you're going on a journey with an empty cup, oh ho ho. Beware.
Be careful what you ask for.
You get what you ask for. And it's all been wonderful. Not easy, but wonderful.
Yeah, not easy, but wonderful.
So what lies in that space? Gosh, the only thing that's coming up for me right now is the word void.
Can I ask you, this is sort of a bit of a, like, let me just ask this question and let me know if it's a useful question or not. But when you are feeling emotionality, I may be making an assumption here, and also feel free to correct me, but I have a sense that you're feeling that all over your body maybe, or where are you feeling that emotionality for the most part when you're feeling it?
It does feel all over my body. It's because it's so enveloping, you know, just like engulfing. It feels like it's all over. So when I am in that void space in between emotions and pragmatism, when I am in that void space and I could feel pragmatism calling my name, there's this little joy that comes up inside of me like, oh, yay.
Where do you feel that in your body? Where do you feel that? Oh, yay. Where do you feel
totally.
Where?
Totally.
Where?
Where do I get that? Where do I get that? In my heart. Heart center. Yeah, in this chakra right here. You just, yeah, it's a joy, you know.
Yeah. And where does pragmatism live in your body?
I've never thought about that. Well, it's not just in my brain, because pragmatism is very motivating for me. Oh man, it's everywhere. It's it's my behavior. It's who I am, how I act. It's what I buy at the store to nourish my body. It's like, it's ever present. Pragmatism is ever present. It's my default mode I want to get back to.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting as I'm observing you, there's this energy that when you started talking about the void and then into pragmatism, that there was this almost this like you lit up, it looked like to me.
I want to feel that more.
Yeah. So when you think about that void between that space between really the space between the emotionality and the pragmatism, and I heard you say in your heart, how do you access that when you want it?
Well, I have to want it.
Yeah. Yeah. What does that tell you, what you just said?
I'm getting in my own way.
So how do you get out of your way so that you can want it?
I could do some interrogative self-talk and perhaps ask myself, what's needed now?
Mm-hmm.
Or what's wanted now?
There was something you said earlier. You said that you felt the void like it was kind of sparkling in your heart almost, I think is at least the image I took away from that. How might you use that experience of your heart?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. How might I use that? Well, I'm having a hard time with that. So I've been doing a great deal of metaphysical work and existential work, which has been fortifying my journey. So I do a lot around meditation, chakra healing. I do a lot around DNA activation to heal myself. But that's all around healing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So how can I apply these wonderful things that are helping me to what I want, which is that to fill that void? I think that might be the direction to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm using it so much for healing. Well, that's great, but maybe I could use it for more than that and refocus on my career, which I want.
Mm-hmm.
I want.
Yeah.
I don't know. Am I lost?
No, I don't think that. In fact, I don't know. Do you feel lost? Or do you feel like you're finding something?
Yeah, I feel like I'm finding something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling I need to take some of the tools that I have developed for myself and apply them and use them in a different way. I've been using them. I could do that.
What's an example of you using the tools that you have in a different way that would support you moving past your way?
yeah, exactly. Maybe doing more meditations that are more, focused and pragmatic. And there's tons. I use Insight Timer, the app Insight Timer. There's only 40,000 meditations there.
You should be able to find a couple, right?
I think that would help me. I think maybe concentrating more on my heart chakra, my third eye chakra. That's always good for coaching. I've been focusing on different chakras for my health. Maybe focus more on those, since heart and my third eye chakra is so important to me.
Yeah. As you hear yourself say that, please capture.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how are we doing on moving towards lightening this load, this rock?
Oh, it feels a little lighter. It feels a little lighter right now. Yeah, I feel a little lighter. I'm not squirming underneath that thing that's kind of holding me down. I'm not squirming. I'm kind of feeling like I could get out of it. I can get out of there.
Moving from the squirm to kind of freeing yourself.
Freeing. I want to, yeah, it is. I do feel a little bit trapped.
What else should we explore then that would support even more getting out of being under pressure?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this. Thank you for that question. So, a little bit of saboteurs going to town on me.
Uh-huh.
A little bit of, damn those saboteurs.
Well, you know, I'm curious because I think, is there something that the saboteurs are saying that needs to be acknowledged so that you can let them go? Or
Yeah, what's that grain of truth? Because I do believe that the saboteur has a purpose. I tell my clients that it's there for a reason. So let's listen to the voice for a minute. What's there?
I love that. That is a great question.
Yeah, because there's always that grain of truth, right,
Yeah.
inside that oyster, that,
Yeah.
you know, of what that's all about. And so for me, yeah. So for me, that grain of truth is chemo brain. That is a real phenomenon.
Yeah.
Get half of everything that I either read, probably more than half, read, think, or hear.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a pretty powerful awareness. How do you give that reality grace?
I accept it and I love it. And, you know, acceptance, just accepting, hey, this is chemo brain. And so I've been doing a lot of pro bono coaching.
Yeah. Well, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, just that, you know, to sharpen my brain, keep my skills sharp and that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
but what I want to be doing is sharpening my brain. So I do some pro bono stuff, which has been helpful because I got furloughed from work, which was extremely hurtful. Probably the reason why I'm underneath that thing. Anyway, so I need to get into that pragmatic, positive place enough where I can be doing these webinars and not holding myself back and getting into them. Maybe today's the first step in all of that.
Well, and I'm curious too, like you talked about your heart and your third eye, like the chakras, and I'm curious how those support you in being in that space.
Well, they're kind of my co-creators.
Yeah.
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 For those of us who went to CTI, we'll all know about the captain and the crew. They're kind of my crew right now. Or maybe it's my, maybe I should do captain again. But
yeah, how do you take this captain and this crew to help you lift this rock off of you, right?
Maybe that's, yes. Yeah. Thank you, Christopher. I was hoping for that.
Yeah.
He's the best at it. So yeah, that's what's happened. That's what's going on. I am feeling some lightness right now. I am feeling some hope. I feel like my saboteur is going to listen. Me and my saboteur are going to have some talks.
I will be very interested in how those conversations go, because they feel like it may be a little different this time around than before.
I don't always win anymore.
Right? You're like, I got my captain and I got my crew, and we're.
Yeah.
What else do you need to really, like, I mean, as you hear yourself in this conversation that we've had today, I'm really curious, what are the pieces that are important to hold on to for yourself?
That my metaphysical practices can be my crew, my new crew, and they could be my new coworkers, and that I can take that really leaning in to some more maybe power evoking meditations will help me. I really love idea of focusing on my heart chakra, my third eye chakra, to really fortify. I'm loving that.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a text message coming in.
I turned it off. They never stop.
Well, and I'm just kind of curious. I mean, that it's interesting that you got the little doo-doo right when you're saying this. I wonder what that means.
I do listen to the universe quite a bit and bring a lot of messages with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like an awakening, or maybe aha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So what is still left between where we are right now and this lightened feeling that you want to really hold on to by the end of our conversation?
Is left.
What is anything? It's up to you.
What's that?
If anything, it's up to you.
What's sitting in there? What's sitting left in that? What's there? Ah, the will and desire. That's what's left.
Yeah.
That's what's there.
Yeah.
It's the will and the desire.
Do you have any values or character strengths that you really can leverage to support the will and desire?
Well, I'm a very strong person.
Mm-hmm.
And I am fighting cancer, damn it. And
Damn
so
it.
if I could fight cancer, I've got to be able to do this, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could conquer there, I can conquer here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a warrior.
I am a warrior. Thank you.
Yeah. So what actions might support you in showing up fully for yourself?
Oh, thank you for asking that question, because my husband just left for work because they're back to work and he gets the afternoon at the office. And so that means I have the office downstairs free. And so I have a little bit of an altar set up for myself of my work that I do. And I've got my energy stones and all that. And after our call today, I'm going to make a beeline for that downstairs and turn on my solfeggio music and maybe get out my mala beads, and we're going to do some work on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this.
Oh, you're so welcome. Where are you at right now?
Well, I'm not drowning anymore. I don't feel that drowning feeling, and that feels wonderful. I'm not coughing anymore. That's always wonderful. I feel great. I feel lighter.
Yeah.
Also, being kind of a pragmatic person, I'm going to want to see evidence of my own success over time, and so I'll be monitoring that.
Yeah. What will demonstrate that you've got success over time? What are you looking for?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. You know, that sense of urgency, dive back in.
Yeah.
Well, what can I do today, or what now, and what's there? And
yeah,
gosh, you know, I could spend $100 and take all of these courses at the Above Leadership, where I've gotten my neuroscience certification from, and $100 to take a whole bunch of webinars just to sharpen my skills and get back in and do all this stuff. I have $100.
That sounds like another action that needs to be taken.
So that me signing up for those webinars is going to be evidence of a successful, pragmatic approach from this coaching.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't get a sense of it, but maybe, is there anything that would stop you that you need to just acknowledge, or no?
No, nothing's there to stop me. In fact, I want to make a commitment. I'm going to sign up for that this afternoon.
Excellent. And you only have, 39 people or so that are witnessing.
To hold me.
Yeah.
That's why I did it.
And accountability.
Because I know several of these people and they're going to get me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love it. I welcome it.
So let me just stop real quick and just touch base with you. Is there anything else before we bring this to a close? Where are you at with the conversation?
I feel so great right now. I feel different from when I started this call. I totally do. I feel different. I feel lighter, and that's a big deal for me to feel lighter. So
Yeah. You are
namaste, my friend.
Well, thank you. I just really want to acknowledge you because, I mean, there's a special kind of bravery to raise your hand and then to bring forward your true vulnerable self. And that is a level of courage that, you know, people don't always just bring. And I really want to acknowledge you. You know, honestly, the greatest gift that any coach can ever get is a client who shows up with something that's important to them, and a trust and vulnerability to be in the weeds with stuff, right? And to be transparent and vulnerable and all of those things. So I really want to acknowledge you.
Thank you.
You know, you are a warrior.
I am.
You are. Yeah. Thank you so much. Does this feel like an okay place to stop and maybe invite the group back?
For sure. It's a great place to stop. And James just I'm getting so much beautiful support right now, and that fills me up like you have no idea.
Yeah.
Thank you, my tribe.
Yeah, and they're here for you.
They are so here for me. It's very meaningful. So no, I'm so good, and thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so tearful because of all of the love.
Yeah, it's a different kind of tears.
Yeah.
Those are the really powerful tears.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for being my partner in this conversation.
It was clearly, as Stephen said here, clearly it was meant to be. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's go ahead and invite everyone back. I'm sure people are going to have questions for you about your experience, and I'm going to sort of shift out of coach role and into more like now getting feedback role. But I'm very curious what folks noticed in the coaching demonstration, and we'll give Cheryl a little bit of time to get her own self into that space she needs to be. But I'd love to hear what people observed in the conversation, and especially in lieu of the core competencies and that idea of the neuroscience of having the client be in the capacity to be at choice and ownership, so that right their brain is firing and lighting up. And please take yourself off mute, because Denise, I can see you. But not. Hi.
Hi, thank you. It was checking in and saying, how are we doing in accomplishing the goal? How are you feeling? I think that might be a key for me, because I come from a business, owning our own businesses for years, and so I'm very solution oriented. This is my one little problem, big of many, but I always struggle with that. But I think if I was to give it back to them and say, how are you viewing this? How are you feeling? Then I'd feel like I could answer my own question instead of trying to find them a solution. I will just check in with them. And I think that's going to really take care of that addiction I have.
So I want to just throw out that I think that asking people how they're feeling can be very appropriate at times. Cheryl was really using the language of feeling, and so that's a piece of it. I will not ask, how are you feeling, just arbitrarily. I will ask a much broader question, like, what are you noticing in this moment? Because feeling to one person might be emotional, to another person it might be physical, and somebody else may be like, yeah, I don't do a lot of that, but I'm thinking this, right? So, or I'm noticing, really opens it up to be as broad for the client to interpret for themselves what is showing up as meaningful. Yeah, Margot, go ahead.
So I really loved when you named her essence, when you said you are a warrior. I saw her light up. She said, I mean, her face, everything was saying, yes, I am a warrior. And in my mind, her brain was all lit up too. So I really, I think that was a pivotal point in the conversation, to keep her really knowing that this is something that she can move past.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
that is the feeling I got. That is how I felt. I felt like she named it, and it also gave me something. Like she named truly how what I believe, and it was also very empowering because it was complimentary too. And so it was like, oh, you see me, and you see me in this beautiful light where I want to be seen. So yeah, it was both.
and it's also what Cheryl said. She didn't use the word warrior, but she said, I'm a fighter. I've been fighting this and I am capable of doing this. I brought the word warrior forward and it lit her up. If it hadn't, we'd have gone with a different word, right? But it is that listening and not being afraid to share what you're observing, but holding it very lightly. I'm not attached to any of it. In the sense of, if Cheryl wants to change it, if Cheryl wants us to go in a different direction, if a word doesn't land right, she gets to rename the word, we'll go with that, right? She is constantly at choice. The metaphor I use for myself in regard to coaching is I see myself as a blind person being led through another person's internal landscape. I rest my hand very lightly on their shoulder and have them direct us. So I often, and I think you may have seen it in this, is use metaphors as a way of creating a linkage in that container of the conversation. What does this heaviness look like to you? It feels, this is what it looks like and feels like I'm under this big heavy thing and I'm like squirming underneath it. Where would you like to be by the end? I'd like it to be lighter. So we use that as a touch point also, which kept us in relationship to the situation, right? The coaching was in relationship to the situation and not the situation specifically. I wasn't driving her towards, you need to start meditating. You need to start doing this. You need to da-da-da-da-da. And I didn't explain any of the neuroscience. She actually brought up, like, I tell my clients all the time, this da-da-da-da-da. That's a really good question. Right? Anytime your client brings up a really good question, you are wasting leverage if you do not capitalize on that question. Every time a client goes, well, I often ask, la, 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 la. Yes, it just lit up their brain. Go with it. Right? Somebody asked, I thought asking where pragmatism lived. Oh, no, wait, there was something else where somebody asked, I wish you had asked about pragmatism. Oh, there it is. Well done. I was hoping to get some illumination on what Cheryl means by pragmatic. And let me say, in this particular conversation, that was a choice point. But let me ask you, would that have gone into her self-awareness as deeply as we did? Or would that possibly have led us into more conversation about her thinking and how what pragmatism means to her? It wouldn't have been a bad choice point at all, just a different choice point, right? Go ahead, Christopher.
Lyssa, that was something I was going to say. So there was a lot of great things in that. The two things that really stood out for me is you continually used her words. And as you reuse them, like she started to look at them deeper and sometimes in different ways. But the second thing that really stood out for me is I think this piece. You didn't go into you having to understand what it means to her because she already had that awareness. Mm-hmm. So I don't know where it would have gone if you had, but I think it was really powerful that you didn't because she already had that awareness and you just kind of touched on it and said, okay, and so how do you want it to serve you? As opposed to let's peel apart what it is. Right.
Right. And I did use the language because she said, there's this emotionality and then this pragmatism. And I wasn't as personally, I mean, again, it's a choice point, not a bad one, just a different one. I wasn't as interested in what pragmatism meant as to what's between this emotionality and this pragmatism. Right. And to your point, Christopher, she already knows what it means to her. Right. And I don't need to understand it. I think there's a big part of coaching where we think we need to understand the details of a client's situation so that we can be of support to them. And I'm going to argue that I don't need to know very much at all about the details of the situation. And in fact, it's one of the reasons I really enjoy using metaphors in coaching conversations, because now we're talking about heavy things on top of us and moving towards lightness. And yet, going back to sort of what Denise was talking about, solution orientation, I mean, I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist and, for 20 years, and I'm solution oriented. And she came up with actions that she was going to take to continue moving towards this getting out of her own way, which is a solution focused orientation. She got that. We just didn't have to drive towards it in a really obvious, straightforward, linear way, right? And having her be the leader of that conversation meant that my guess is, Cheryl can correct me, but my guess is she's going to remember the things she agreed to do for herself, right? Yeah, James.
Yeah, what I liked about is how you asked her questions about her relationship with what she was feeling. She talked about the fear, and it was as if you were sitting beside her on the couch watching the videotape, and she was pointing out the things in her behavior in this relationship, and the light bulbs were going on, and she was then writing on the whiteboard what to do about them. So and when she started to do that, her head went up like this, and when it came back down, the light came back to her face.
Yeah.
And we watched that transformation, which was amazing.
And isn't that the most amazing experience, to sit with another human being while they have the light bulbs turn on, and to hold the space of that? I think it is the greatest honor in being a coach. Is to sit with another human being and to be human with them, but to watch their humanness and their capacity to be whole, capable, creative, resourceful, and it all is within them. Any other thoughts or questions that are coming up for folks? Well, then I'm going to go back to my slides, because I've got a couple more slides to share with you guys. And please bring yourself off mute if you have a question or something, please. So I see coaching, and I really see this invitation to listen deeply as a way that we access this positive emotional activation, right? And being willing to be taught by our clients. Again, that blind person being led through another person's emotional landscape. Noticing emotional shifts. I noticed a few of them, but then I still asked meaning. I didn't assume I knew what those things meant. And I also often, in the work that I do, even with people who I've been working with for a really, really long time, I'll still say, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be wrong, right? Like, I'm just throwing out an idea here, and it's informed by my experience, but it doesn't mean it's right. And I'm not attached to being right. I'm attached to being useful. Not helpful, useful. Noticing these shifts, asking about them, using the client's words, tones of voice, body language, asking what it means for them, which is going back to, what does pragmatic mean? Wouldn't have been a bad question at all. Would have been a great question, just a different choice point. And then noticing their behaviors and emotions. You know, the longer you work with people, you can start to see patterns and themes come out. And so, like, with many of the people that I've worked with for a period of time, like, you know, longer than a 3 to 6 month engagement. I have a few clients I've worked with for several years. And what you find is that it's sort of the unpeeling of the onion, but it's also a spiral. And so, like, they get it here, and then they swing back around, and it comes up again in a slightly nuanced new way. And we get to explore that pattern again in a new situation. It's what happens in our own lives also, because that's why we say things like, I thought I had already gotten past that. And we'd gotten past it here. But now we've gone through, and now we're here. So we're having a similar experience, but in a new way, right? And that's how people change through time. And that's a natural part of the change process. And so noticing those patterns can be incredibly useful. And then allowing silence and space for your client to think. I think oftentimes coaches really feel the need to fill that void of space with their words. And I mean, part of the reason I always have a glass of water or something with me is, and I'll have a cup of coffee sometimes, or tea, if I'm like like depending on what I need, the warmth or the cool, but I have something that I can then take a drink of water. It allows for a lot of space. I'm not going to be talking, I'm going to be quiet. And that's a useful thing. And then the coaching mindset. I mean, I got my first coach training in 2008. I'd been doing this work well before that because I was a social worker and I had my own private practice and things like that. So I've been working with people from this perspective for a long time. And but I have definitely found that when I got my ACC, I got it in 2014, and I already had enough hours for my PCC, but I went sort of in order because I was really wanting to unpack what coaching was different than therapy. And so I got my ACC, and then in 2016, I got my PCC, and then I got my MCC in 2018. So it tells you a little bit about the arc of my journey. It was a pretty hard arc, and I would tell you that I do not think I could have done that kind of arc in my coaching if it had not been for the fact that I have developed very deep reflective practices in my own coaching. So one of the things that I do often is transcript analysis. So I will I'll get a recording of a client call, and I will get the transcript done. And I will go in and I will look at what the client offered, and I will look at my question. I will look at what the client offered next, and I will look at my question. And I will notice the places where I'm talking too much, or I've decided I needed to be the expert and explain something really important and meaningful to me for them to know. And I will really do a self-assessment on my own work. I also think this develops my own self-awareness about where I get hooked, right? What are the certain topics where I'm like a fish with a hook and I'm like, and I have to kind of, pull it back, right? And then there's some of these other things really come out of this new coaching mindset competency, really practicing, your breathing, practicing your mindfulness techniques, whether it's walking meditations or whatever, so that you can really manage your own emotional states, because people come to us. And if I had gotten really sad with Cheryl, we could have gone down a completely different road than if I had just been able to hold the space. Have compassion, but hold the space. I don't need to be in that same emotionality with her. It would not have necessarily been useful for her. So questions and answers, and I'm going to just leave you guys. I have, just real quick, I have a bunch of different things, and I'm going to put a link in the chat to go check out this information, and it'll give you the stuff. And it has like the paper for this neuroscience work. So I'll put that in the chat. But really, any questions that you guys have, thoughts, insights, awarenesses, things that you might practice doing yourself with your own coaching?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Tammy again. Beautiful coaching session. It was just very inspiring. And just to, and effective, just to ask a follow-up question about your self-analysis that you do when you listen back or look at your transcripts. Do you have a guideline or something that you tend to drive toward in terms of percentages of how much you use questions versus how much you reflectively listen or listen deeply? I noticed in your session with Cheryl, your questions drove the conversation, with some reflection and some support. I just wondered if you have sort of a guideline that you work toward in your own coaching in terms of how, if a session's 50 minutes or an hour, how do you measure how much questioning you use, or something just as a guideline?
I think I'm understanding the question. So let me just try, and if I don't get it, Tammy, please, I'll take another stab at it. But In my own coach development, my first biggest learning hurdle was really around assumptions. And so making an assumption that because I'm pretty intuitive about what people are saying, that I knew what they meant. And so I wasn't asking enough around meaning. So my first real shift in my coaching was to get clarity around what things meant to people. And so I spent a lot of time focused on that micro skill. Then there was the desire to share my wisdom. I really had to, so I really try to not share wisdom. I really try to have a 0% or 2% of wisdom sharing that I do in my coaching, but I don't have that. That's not formalized. I don't think, oh, I only get 2% of wisdom, so I'm gonna just I'll share this one little bit and then I'll be done. I really try and focus on asking open-ended questions that allow as many possibilities as the client might like. And I really try and make sure that as many of those things that I ask, that I really don't waste opportunities to ask an open-ended question. Right? I don't waste opportunities. So, but that's been it, moving from telling to asking was the biggest thing. Yeah.
That helps a lot. Thank you.
That and being concise. I gotta be honest with you, when I first started coaching, my questions were wackadoodle. They were just long, convoluted, complicated questions. And I'd be like, I don't even know what I asked. And so, clients would be like, what? And then be like, okay, stop. Let me try to rephrase that. And so I tried to work really hard. And that was a big part of looking at the question that I asked, because I would just write underneath it, here's another way of asking it. Simple, concise. Simple, concise, simple, concise, right? And just starting to practice getting into my own brain what simple, concise questions might even look like or sound like.
Well, your dedication to your usefulness was very apparent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work.
There's a lot of transcription services out there. And I have typically used Temi, TEMI.com. It's part of Rev. They're like 25 cents a minute for your coaching, to get a transcript done. And it's nice because they break it down and you can get the timestamps. And if anybody's going for a certification, you're going to need to have coach, client, timestamp, and then what they actually said. And Temi makes it really easy to get it's a computer algorithm that will give you a transcript. You have to go in and listen and clean it up, but you can pause and then retype what it did not get. There was one call that I don't remember what the word was anymore, but it could not understand the word. But luckily it consistently misunderstood the word through the entire transcript. So I was able to do a change all kind of thing up at the beginning. So all of the rutabaga got turned into relationship or whatever the word was that it was not understanding. So I have used Temi a lot. Yeah. Anything else coming up for folks? We got a couple minutes left. Dave, should I hand it over to you?
If you like. Yes, I was going to let people know about some of the things that we've got coming up. So thank you so much, Lyssa. That was amazing. Thank you, all of you, for taking part. Thank you so much to Cheryl for being willing to open her heart in front of so many people.
Yeah.
So coming up, we've got the book club on July the 9th, looking at a wonderful book called Flex. And then on the 16th, we actually have someone who was very instrumental in my own coach training, the magnificent Mercy Miliano, who is this wonderful down-to-earth New Yorker who will be telling us about mastering the 30-minute coaching session and getting more clients as a result. So I look forward to seeing you all there. And thank you again, Lyssa. That was wonderful.
And thank you again, Cheryl, for being my partner today, and all of you for participating and your questions and just your presence. Thank you guys so much. I've really enjoyed being with Orange County. So
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Lyssa. That was great.
And I need a special shout out to Miss Penny Rimpfer, who I know from Washington State. Thank you for being here, Penny. Lovely to see you. And thank you all for being here. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Blessings to you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Lots of light your way.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.